Kory.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. If you know me, you know that I really love dictionaries, and I have been writing them for over 20 years. And I love helping people discover new vocabulary, especially. What you don't know, probably, is that my favorite dictionaries to write are actually dictionaries for English language learners. I love being able to take English, which we all think of as being a giant mess, and really make it something comprehensible and accessible to folks who want to learn it. So we'll start with the dictionary part of things. What is dictionary.cambridge.org? Dictionary.cambridge.org is the #1 vocabulary learning website for English language learners on the planet. That's not an exaggeration. There are 40 million unique visitors to the site every month, and those people are coming specifically to learn vocabulary. Now it says dictionary.cambridge.org, and it's called Cambridge Dictionary, but there's more than dictionaries there. If you scroll down the home page, you will see a link to our About Words blog post, which really highlights and gives advice on usage for both British English and American English. We have a word of the day. There's a new words feature where you and your students can vote on which words should be entered into the dictionary. But you know, the point of the whole dictionary.cambridge.org site is the dictionary part. So we have some. It's very exciting. You can access 7 different monolingual learners dictionaries from the homepage, including the Cambridge Advanced Learners Dictionary, which I think probably everyone here has heard of. Now, you may think, well, I have one of those in the classroom, or I have one at home, and you know, it's propping up my monitor. The great thing about having the Cambridge Advanced Learners online is that it is updated constantly. In fact, we're always adding new vocabulary, new features. We've just added a whole bunch of new coverage for American English, and that's very exciting. So I'm going to basically go through using the Cambridge Dictionary to create word lists, and then we'll talk about how to use those word lists to practice vocabulary and how to use them in a classroom and remotely in particular, since this is now the space we live in. So the Advanced Learners is just called the English Dictionary on the homepage. That's the one I'm going to focus on. Let's start with, why should we bother with word lists? Aren't word lists kind of boring? Well, the first point is that learners need vocabulary for second language proficiency. Our research indicates that a learner needs between 5,000 and 9,000 words to feel like they know a language and they can be proficient in a language. That's just the base that they need for proficiency. Grammar is important, but vocabulary is what's going to propel them forward. Word lists can help you organize and encourage vocabulary learning. And I don't just mean that they can organize words into groups that are semantic or that topics, but also you can use word lists to help quiz students to learn vocabulary in a really deep way. Research shows that a word needs to be seen up to 10 times before it really sticks in your deep memory. And so word lists actually keep vocabulary chunks in one place. Word lists are really flexible. You can customize a word list per lesson, per student, per class. You can use pre-made word lists. You can use your own word lists. Your students can use word lists to help track their own learning. You can organize them by topic or by, semantic similarity. The other thing is the Cambridge word lists familiarize your students with using a monolingual learner's dictionary. I'm going to get on a soapbox briefly because I can, and talk about what a monolingual learner's dictionary is. Now, your students, we know how to use search engines to define a word. We know that they know how to use translation software. They know that there are websites they can go to where they can get, you know, a whole bunch of different dictionary definitions concatenated into one spot. The problem is that none of those places are actually going to give them the information that they need as a learner. The monolingual learner's dictionary is really different from a dictionary written for native speakers. The defining vocabulary is simpler, so the definitions themselves are not going to be really complicated. A learner's dictionary will contain grammatical information specific to learners. They'll get to know, for instance, is this a count noun? Is this an uncountable noun? Is this a transitive verb, intransitive verb? Learners' dictionaries highlight collocations and native speakers' dictionaries absolutely do not. Collocations are so important for learners to get. They also highlight idioms and phrases and phrasal verbs in ways that native speakers' dictionaries don't. And the biggest thing that learners' dictionaries include are example sentences. And the Cambridge Learners Dictionaries all include example sentences taken from a corpus. It's corpus-based. They're not these sort of weird constructed sentences that don't make sense. And that stuff, especially the usage examples, are really important for learners. It gives them something to hang definitions on. So basically, if you have students who are language learners, English language learners, they should be using a monolingual learner's dictionary. And Cambridge is a great one. The other thing about word lists is they communicate more than vocabulary. So I took this example. This is a word list from Cambridge Dictionary that we put together on words related to watching the Super Bowl. Now, it's not vocabulary specific to the Super Bowl. It's about watching the Super Bowl. In America, the Super Bowl is a national institution, and watching it with your friends and neighbors is a huge cultural and social event that your students, if they're in America, would want to know about. So you'll see, you know, our first word is buffalo wings. They are not on the field. They are often being eaten while you're watching. These sorts of things can help introduce students to cultural or social events or patterns that are really important in a way that also increases their vocabulary. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of how to make word lists. We're going to go back to dictionary.cambridge.org, the homepage, and we have word list functionality. So first thing you need to do is you need to log in or sign up for Dictionary Plus. This is where all of your word lists will be found. The login is up top. Now, if you just click Go to Plus down here on the bottom, you'll be taken to the Dictionary Plus homepage, which at this point, everything that has to do with Dictionary Plus is in yellow, so that helps differentiate things. If you have not logged in, we give you more opportunity to sign up and log in. We're very, very subtle about it. The whole point is you need to have a login to Dictionary Plus in order to use the word list. Dictionary Plus is free, doesn't require anything from you except a username and a password. So let's go ahead, we're gonna log in. Once you log in, this is the first thing you see. You'll see that word lists are right there. Now, if you haven't made a word list, it's really easy to create one. You are just going to type in a name and hit create word list. So I'm creating a word list on coronavirus vocabulary, right? Very topical, lots of really new and very specific terms that your students are going to be running into. So type in the name, click create word list. You've now created a word list. Now you have to populate it with words. The best way to do that is to go through and start looking words up. So here's coronavirus. This is a word that everyone has been hearing all over the place. How do you add it to your word list? Well, if you look over to your right, you'll see there's this little yellow lozenge with a plus in it. That's how you add words to your word list. If you click on that, what you get is a pop-up on your left, and you have a couple of choices. You can say, I'm going to add this one to my word list. You can click the name of the word list. Or if you want to start a new word list, you can type that in down at the bottom, and then you can click the little orange check mark circle as well. That's how you add words to the word list. I'm going to do 2 quick notes about adding words. The first is, I keep saying adding words. What I really mean by that is you're actually going to be adding specific definitions. Each definition in the Cambridge Dictionary has that little yellow lozenge. And the reason that I say it's important is because the quiz functionality, which I'll get to in a second, is based on those definitions. So let's say you're doing a list on fashion and you want to highlight come back, the phrasal verb, as it refers to fashion. Like, whoever thought that the 80s would make a comeback or would come back? This is not the correct definition. You don't want to have that in your word list. That means to return to a place. So I'm very sorry, you must do the hateful thing and you must scroll down. If you scroll down, then you'll see the right definition. And then you can click the little yellow lozenge next to that definition. Again, this is important because this is what a lot of your quiz functionality is based on. So first note. Second note, if you're on your homepage, you go up to the far right corner, you're going to see your name, and then you're going to see a language. Now, the Cambridge website tries to, based on your IP address, guess where you are, but it's always good to double check that little thing right up there and make sure that you're actually using the right dictionary. What do I mean by that? I mean that the Cambridge Dictionary has a huge amount of new American information in it. And if your language is set to English UK, that means the first thing you're going to see is the British English version. So if it says that and you need American English, click on it, and you're going to see a big drop down with languages, and then you can choose English US. That means then that if you look something up and you're learning American English, you're going to get the American senses first. If you think this really doesn't matter, I encourage you to look up pants in the UK and pants in English and see that in America, when you're in Chicago and you're shopping for pants, that's not an embarrassing thing, that is a normal thing. Whereas in the UK, it might be embarrassing to mention that. You'll also see a bunch of other languages there. If you click on those, it does not change the language of the dictionary. It changes the language of the introductory and explanatory stuff around the English dictionary. So that's the second thing about adding words. All right, we're going to go back to our custom word lists. You'll see I've created a bunch of word lists here. I have my COVID list. I have a list of pronunciation exercises. And then I have a list called Proverbs March 25th. That's actually a list I put together based on an About Words blog post about Proverbs. So if I'm going to be assigning that in class or asking my students to read through it, I can create that word list so that they can use it. Let's just look at what information is here first. So the first thing you see is the title of your word list with a number next to it. That's the number of items inside of your list. Why is it important to know that? Well, research tells us that the best way to learn vocabulary is to practice it in small chunks using spaced repetition. So you're going to do it on Monday, and then you'll take another quiz on Wednesday, and then maybe you'll wait until Sunday, and then the more you see it and the further apart you space it, the deeper it sits in your memory. Now, if you have a list of 500 words, which you can create lists up to 500 words, that's great, but that's going to be a lot to get through. So the number of words in your list we try to keep them in our pre-made word lists around 20. That seems to be a good number. If you head over to the right, you're going to see beginner, question mark, and a trash can. The trash can, if you want to get rid of your word lists, that's pretty fine. Beginner, advanced, those are levels that you assign to your word lists. And I'll get into how to do that on the next slide. But the levels can be helpful so you can know sort of what you're giving your students, and your students might be able then to say, oh, this is an advanced word list, but I know lots of the words on this. All right, let's click into one of our word lists. Take a look at our COVID list. When you click on your list, this is what you see. We're going to start at the top. Very top is the name of your list. That makes plenty of sense. Next to it is a lock. That means that this is a private list. This means only you can see it. Over to your right, you'll see rename. That's to rename the list. And then you'll see make public. Now, if you want to share this list with your students and you want to make it public, you click make public. But I would encourage you to rename it something that your students will recognize. My guess is that there is probably, I don't know, a couple dozen COVID lists in the public word list space already. So just be aware of that. We're going to skip the line that starts with test yourself. We're going to go down to tag this list. So you'll see tag this list. You have choose dictionary. That's just which dictionary are you choosing these words from. And for the most part, you're going to be just using the English dictionary. But if you decide you're going to do a list of business terms and you want to highlight the Cambridge Business English Dictionary, you can choose that dictionary. If you're using the Intermediate American Dictionary, you can choose that. This is just a way for you to know which dictionary you're pulling vocabulary from. Next to that is choose level. Now this is where you set the vocabulary level for your list. Now this is sometimes hard. Sometimes vocab lists, especially if they're topical, have words that are sort of all over the place. And you might not know, how do I choose which level this is? Really, what's the difference between intermediate and advanced if I'm trying to figure this out? Well, if you go back to your entry, you will see in some of the entries this little blue oval with a letter and a number after it. That is actually the CEFR level for that particular meaning of that particular word. Lots of the entries in the Cambridge Dictionary have a CEFR level. If you don't know what the CEFR is, it's short for the Common European Framework of Reference for Language. This is a way to basically rate based on a lot of Cambridge corpus material, classroom materials, exams, vocab lists, writing, that kind of thing, what words learners know. And it rates them A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. A1 is the easiest, C2 is the most difficult. Not every entry in the dictionary has a CEFR level, but if it does, that helps you rate then, is this a beginner list? Is this an intermediate list? They can be helpful. All right, let's get back to our list. Now we're going to get to the good stuff. We're going to get to the quiz. The word lists inside of Cambridge Dictionary all have built-in quiz functionality. So you don't have to create quizzes out of this. So we're going to start with by clicking test yourself. That takes you to the quiz. Here's what this looks like. It is a fill in the blank quiz. We know that lots of people want a multiple choice quiz. We're actually working on that. Part of the thing that we're trying to figure out is which distractors to add and how to pull distractors in from your lists, etc. But for right now, it's fill in the blank. So here we go. What word or phrase matches the definition? You just type in, you have your students click submit, and it tells you if the answer was correct or not. Now, tell your students they do not need to panic if they got it wrong. They don't need to make note of it. At the end of the quiz, we give you a results list so you can see what you got right, what you got wrong. The other thing that the quizzes have is a little audio component. And this can be really helpful for matching sound to the word, especially in English, because we know it's not phonetic. And I'm very sorry for that, but it's not going to change. The thing you should know is that oftentimes the sound that you hear is pulled from the very first file, and that is often British English. So just be aware of that as you're going through the lists. All right, so we go through, and at the very end, I am given my results list. I only got 15 out of 20 on my own list because I took the quiz pretty long after I put the list together. If you scroll down, you'll actually see here's what the question was, here's what you answered, here's what the correct answer is. This is so helpful for your students to do, but what happens if your students don't have access to the internet? What happens if they're doing this over their phone? What happens if they're in a public library and they can't get to the computer? One of the great things about Dictionary Plus is if you go back to your list, next to Test Yourself is a little download link. And you can choose to download your list as a word list or a quiz in Excel. Once you download these, they are on your machine. You can do whatever you want with them. You can email them to students. You can print them out, whatever you need to. So this is what they've looked like. I downloaded my COVID list both as a quiz and as a word list. This is really great for doing offline work with your students. I know that's hard to do right now because we're not seeing our students, but it can be really helpful for them to have it in a form that is offline. So if they're on a metered internet connection, or if they don't have enough phone data, they've got it there, they can still study. All right, there are other word lists. This is the other great thing. The word lists that we have on Dictionary Plus are not just your word lists. The Cambridge Dictionary team pulls together word lists that are specifically tied in with Cambridge products like Ventures. So if you use Ventures in the classroom, this will be great. And if you click more, I think we have about 20 word lists currently visible, but we're adding new lists all the time. Some of them are topical, some of them are semantic, so we have a list on phrasal verbs. Some of them are social. We have that Super Bowl word list. And then if you look under the Cambridge word lists, you have community word lists. Now, these are those public word lists. You'll remember I told you you can share out your word lists. This is how you do it. These are not necessarily put together by people who are teaching or learning English as a second language. They are just lists of words. So as you use them, they might be of varying usefulness to you, but they are there if your students need to practice. With each of these pre-made lists, you can use the quiz and the download functions, but you cannot add to them. So you still have all of the functionality of being able to practice and test. There's also a way to search for word lists. You can search for word list titles. This can be helpful if you have, for instance, you're telling your students, hey, we're going to be reading the About Words blog post on Proverbs. I've shared out a word list. It is called Proverbs_March 25. They can search for it by title. Super helpful. If you want to see, for instance, what other words are there on environmentalism or climate change, what other lists are there, you can search for those. You can also filter word lists. This can be really helpful if you're trying to find vocabulary for your students, particularly by level. If you're saying, I have no idea, I just don't have anything intermediate in what I've got, you can actually look for all word lists that are tagged as intermediate. And then when you're sick of words, because even people who write dictionaries get sick of words sometimes, we have image quizzes on Plus. This seems like a really, relaxing and silly way to blow off steam. It's actually a great way to reinforce vocabulary learning by tying, these concrete nouns with a picture. You'll see that the image quizzes are also rated. So if you really want to challenge yourself, go for the 4 shields. I did not know that was an echidna until I took the quiz over on the far right. Right now, we do have some images in there that are specific to British English, but we are actually in the next couple of weeks going to be making sure that all of the images in the quizzes are region neutral. So you don't get people upset that a football is called soccer ball or vice versa. The other thing we're adding to Plus is we are going to be doing some grammar quizzes based on the grammar that we have online at dictionary.cambridge.org, which is English Grammar Today. Currently, you can search for topics off of the homepage, but we're going to be creating quizzes and putting them on Plus as well. All right. But aren't word lists boring, right? This is what we've all learned. Word lists do not inspire students to learn vocabulary. Yes and no, they can be boring, but you can also make them really fun. One good thing to do is to ask students to get used to creating their own lists for words that they don't understand from a reading or an assignment, and then have them either share those with you or email them to you. This is a really, really good way to help gauge your students' learning. You can say, oh, I see that, someone is really having problems with phrasal verbs. Let's do some phrasal verbs. Or you can see, that, oh, they're really charging ahead with vocab. This is great. It's also really helpful for your students to just get into the habit of doing it, because it can be encouraging for them to look back at, 6 months ago I did this, and look at where I'm at now. The next thing you can do, create lists ahead of time for your classroom activities, especially now that we are all doing everything online or over the phone. You just don't have that same level of interaction that you are used to in a classroom or face-to-face. Give your students as much time as they need. Give them their lists ahead of time. I know they are all binging Tiger King on Netflix, aren't we all? Have them do a list. Excuse me. Have them, after every episode, just take 5 minutes and read through a list for, the classroom activities for this week. You can use the list to do a 5-minute lightning round quiz. I did them when I was tutoring in class with high school students. I usually add candy as a treat. But you can do them online. You can do them via screen share. So just like we're doing now, share out your screen in Zoom or Skype or whatever. Go to your word list, click test yourself, and have your students take the quiz with you. It's a great way to encourage participation, and it gives them some confidence too. They can see this happen in real time. They can see what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. You can download the list, have students quiz each other in person, on Skype, over the phone, especially for students who don't have internet access or don't have reliable internet access. If they've got access to a phone line, they can still have a sense of learning and a sense of community. I always liked using word lists to do creative storytelling exercises. Do it in chat, do it over Zoom. It's basically like what we call the exquisite corpse in English, where you take your word list, you take the first word, you create one sentence out of it. The next person takes the second word, they have to create a sentence out of it that builds on the story you have started. Is it silly? Yes. Will it feel awkward in chat or over Zoom? Yes. Will your students care when you get past the third sentence? No, they'll love it. This is a thing that makes English fun. And that's really the thing that you need to focus on in trying to do vocab is English is a fabulous language. So make it fun for them. And this is a great one to do, particularly now when we're all remote. Have your tech-savvy students create memes using vocab lists. Share those memes online with the class. If you don't know what a meme is, you can look it up. Everyone has seen them, and it's a great way to have your students play with language. That's really the thing. Word lists can be boring if we treat them like they're boring. If you treat them as sort of this great resource for play, your students are going to take it as a resource for play, and they're going to engage with it in a different way. So you have suggestions for the dictionary team. Suggestions particularly about functionality for the website. What kinds of things would you like to see on the plus pages? You can send those to dictionary@cambridge.org, and those will be forwarded to the planning team. We are, as everybody else is, all over the place online. So our Instagram account, you can find the word of the day there. Our Twitter account, we post an idiom of the week, and we have tongue twisters for pronunciation practice. We also have list topical vocab. And then at Facebook, Cambridge Dictionaries Online on Facebook, there's pronunciation videos, but there's also some helpful stuff for you as a teacher. And there are little classroom type activities that your students can do, you know, while we're all sheltering in place and while we're all learning remotely online. And I think that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Kory. That was very interesting. I can't wait to get on to Dictionary Plus and play some of those games. It looks really fun. If anyone has any questions, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. And while we wait for those to come in, I just want to remind everyone that this webinar has been recorded, and a link to the recording along with a link to download your certificate will be emailed to you in about 1 to 2 weeks. Great. Let's see if we have any questions coming in. Yes, we've had a lot of questions on whether students need to create accounts or to log in to access quizzes and word lists. And I've been sending private answers to those questions, but yes, students do need to log in, but they can create an account on Dictionary Plus, or they can log in using their existing Facebook or Google account logins. Right. Right, Kory, we have a question here. Are we as teachers able to create quizzes using images?
At this point, no, because the images that we have are basically what are in the dictionary. I will go ahead though, I'll make note of it and I'll send it to the planning team because that is helpful. There are lots and lots of image quizzes on, I only showed you, excuse me, the first line, but we have, probably 50 to 60 image quizzes currently, maybe even more. So we will be adding to them, but we'll take the request back to the planning group.
Thank you. See, there's a lot of comments about how what an amazing dictionary Cambridge dictionaries are. So thank you for that. Let's see. We'll just give it a few more minutes to see if we get any other questions. But I think Kory, if you could flip back to the previous slide with the information where the social media and where people can send in questions and comments about the dictionary. All right. We'll just give it a few more minutes. Right, here's a question. Are the quizzes trackable for teachers? So I guess if a student takes a quiz, would that result be able to, would the teachers be able to access or see those results, or is it just more for fun?
It's just more for personal learning. If you want your students to do that, have them go ahead and either print them out or take a quick, they can save the web page as a PDF or as a text file and email that to you. But they're mostly for personal learning, personal tracking.
Okay, great. There are a couple of questions asking whether the Cambridge Dictionary is available as an app.
That I don't know. Is Gwendolyn Nichols available?
I am here.
All right.
Hi everybody. I am the publishing manager for Cambridge Dictionaries, and I've been watching your questions come through, and I think I might just jump in and answer a few of them. The app is available, and it is not what you have seen here. We will be developing a whole new one that is very much about the Plus experience. But at the moment, the app that you might find in the app stores is the 4th edition of the British Dictionary. So watch for, I'm sure that we will be broadcasting to the skies when we have our app developed. Regarding tracking, this is a free service, and so it isn't like an LMS. We don't have progress tracking. And as Kory said, the best way to capture how you've done in a quiz is for students to take a screenshot and send it back to you. I want to encourage you to use the downloading. They are Excel files, they're not PDFs, and so you can manipulate them, because the public sharing version has two things that you might want to just remember. One is that students do need to log in and be registered themselves in order to find any word list that you post. I just want to assure everybody that Cambridge has really, really rigorous privacy settings, all the same ones that apply to our learning management systems also applies to the registration on CDO. They do have on the Cambridge Dictionary Online. We do also have the option of logging in via Google or Facebook if they already have those accounts. But those public lists, you do need to know what the name is of the list that has been shared and to find it. And so, when the volume is high, that can be a little challenging, and that is actually something that we're working on and we're aware of. I really encourage you to download, and because you can manipulate them and then use both the lists, the pure lists, and also the quiz that way. Other questions have to do with using the dictionary with Quizlet. No, that's a completely separate product, and it would be a violation of our content to put that into Quizlet. What we're trying to do is develop our own quiz capabilities so that they are much more gamified, and that's what the new app development is going to be all about.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off, but we are running out of time. So as I put in the chat, it says please send all questions to dictionary@cambridge.org and use the subject line webinar question. And Wendy or any other member of her team will be happy to answer those questions for you.